And welcome back to the Cover 3 podcast here on CBS Sports. That's Tom Fornelli. That's Danny Cannell. That's Bud Elliott. I'm Chip Patterson here on a Monday, live with those of you who are watching at youtube.com/cover3, as we are each and every Monday, 3 p.m. Eastern time. If you want to join us for the taping, if you've got questions, hold on to them because we'll get a chance to circle back around to them. But we've got a loaded show right now. We love doing this on Monday afternoons because we get so many updates. We got a lot of injury updates we need to address. We've got some academic eligibility updates we need to address. We need to, as always on Monday, have our Upon Further Review segment where we can, with a chance to digest everything that's happened on the weekend, maybe refine some of our takes from the Saturday night show or on Sunday. Texas quarterback battles are back in the headline. Plus, we want to get our week 3 storylines. Massive weekend ahead with Florida, Alabama, SEC on CBS. Hello. We also have Penn State hosting Auburn. That's going to be another massive one to keep your eyes on. Lots to be able to get into. But I wanted to begin with a little bit of an activity. We're not going to do this every single week, but I do think that if there's any updates to the top 25 polls or the top 25 rankings that are notable, we'll try to address them right here at the beginning. But this stood out to me because for the top 12 teams in both the AP and the coaches poll, it is the same 12 teams right there. There's like a cutoff line right above UCLA, which is at number 13 in both polls. However, half of that top 12 is not the same. And not only is it not the same, but it's separated by 2 ranking positions. So there are these teams, half of the top 12, which the AP voters and the coaching voters all seem to be at least somewhat split on. So the game that I wanted to play was we're going to go team by team, and I want you to tell me whether you're with the AP or with the coaches. Now, you may specifically think that it's totally crazy, but I'm trying to make this as binary as possible and say, either AP or coaches. If you want to make it neither, that's fine. But I thought that this would be a way for us to get a chance to look at some of these teams outside of the top 3, because the top 3 are the same in both rankings, where there seems to be some differing of opinions. And I think that's representative, especially at this point in the season. So we begin with the Iowa Hawkeyes. Iowa is number 5 in the AP top 25 and number 7 in the coaches. Where are we at? Are we with the AP or are we with the coaches?
I'm with neither.
Thank you. Me neither.
Like further down?
Like why? No, I got them higher. And why would you have Oklahoma ahead of Oregon? Like what have they done?
They beat Western Carolina.
Yeah, 76-0. Way to go.
Well, the CBS Sports 130 has Oregon number 3. So you'll be happy to know that the voters for the CBS Sports 130 at least have that. My hunch here is that coaches think Iowa's fraudulent. Coaches see an Iowa team that offensively does not intimidate maybe a lot of defenses. And I understand the coaches poll is sometimes the SID poll. We can be honest about this. But I lean a little bit more with the AP on this one. I go higher on Iowa as opposed to lower with the coaches.
As somebody who has bet – sorry, go ahead.
I was just saying, do you know what team is ranked 125th in the country in yards per play on offense?
Is it Iowa?
It's Iowa. That's the 5th best team in the country. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not taking away anything from their wins over Indiana and Iowa State. So from a resume perspective, considering Indiana was ranked 17th, I think, to start the season, and Iowa was ranked, 9th or 10th last week when Iowa beat it, I get why people are kind of putting it where it was. I think in my Super 16 poll, I had them 10th. So I understand it. It's just, that's not the 5th best team in the country, man. That offensively, that team is way too limited.
They beat Iowa State by 10 points. They had 23.3 points of turnover luck in that game. On a down-to-down basis, Iowa State was absolutely the better team. Now, look, Iowa deserved to win because Iowa State didn't take care of the football. That's the narrative you're going to paint if you're not one of these turnovers is luck guys. And I can get with that, right? Because Iowa kind of played its game. But its game is really limited, guys. This offense sucks. 2.7 yards a play compared to 5.4, I think, before garbage time for Iowa State. And I know Iowa State had a little bit of stuff in garbage time, so it is important to filter that out like we talked about on the instant reaction. This is not a top 10 quality football team to me based on how it's played. It has beaten 2 teams that we talked about all summer were overrated as hell. in Indiana and Iowa State. And I bet on Iowa both weeks, so I'm not hating on Iowa. I'm really happy they cashed for me. This offense is way too limiting. This is not a top 10 quality team if that doesn't get fixed a lot.
Yeah, and you just touched on it. Indiana fans, you'll be thrilled to hear this coming out of my mouth about a team that's not you. Do you know who currently leads the nation in points off turnover margin through 2
By
weeks?
a huge margin, right?
Iowa, 37. They are plus 37 on turnovers through 2 games. That is not sustainable.
I got a question. Does winning matter? Does winning matter? Does does who
It
you
matters
beat
in
matter?
the game, but if
It
you're
should.
projecting forward, if you're evaluating team quality, how you actually played on the field should matter more than what the scoreboard said.
But this is
Absolutely.
big, dumb college football. Like I'm
Yes.
warning you, you're going to be mad about Iowa. You're going to be mad about Iowa for
Good.
weeks as they continue to win and be ranked higher and higher. Danny, I'm with you. I think winning matters. I'm fine with Iowa at 5.
Do you know who loves Iowa at 5? Ohio State.
Yes.
Because that's a big part of their path to getting back in the playoff.
Yeah,
Great.
and don't get me wrong. Like I think Iowa could very easily be the best team in the West right now, and I think it could win the division. I just think that it needs to improve on offense. And when I look at the rankings again, I get it this early in the year with 2 wins over teams that were ranked, and Ohio State losing, Clemson losing. It's going to vault some teams up in the poll that probably aren't going to be there at the end of the season. So I understand, but.
What
Come
year
on.
was it? 2015 when they made it to the Big Ten championship game and lost to Michigan State, like on the goal line.
Mhm.
And then
Yeah.
Michigan State went on and got smoked by Alabama.
Mhm.
Like people lost their minds then. I remember getting into it with Rosillo. I was on the radio show and like arguing him because he's like, they're not that good. I'm like, if they're not that good, someone will beat them. So like, that's my like, you should put them like, if you want to ask me, who do I think is going to win the Big Ten? Then yeah, I'll give you another answer. But if you want to ask me who should be ranked today based on what we've seen so far, their wins are up there with as anybody in the country. You can make a case for them. So like it's that whole balance of, do we think they're good now? Like are they the prettiest looking team? And it'll probably be like last year with Indiana. Remember we get in there like, oh, Indiana, like look at the turnover margin. Look how many points they're scoring somehow. Like they still did get 2 pick sixes against Indiana. Iowa did. So I'm always like, you put them where they deserve to be ranked now. And if they're not good, if it's not pretty, somebody will beat them. And then you
did
drop
you bet
them.
Iowa State with me? Or
What's
did you
that?
You bet Iowa over the weekend, right?
Yeah. No,
Or did you have Iowa
I
State?
No,
did.
he bet Iowa State.
I bet Iowa State, but
Danny, you had the right side. If I had to do this all over again, I would bet Iowa State -4 based on how that game was played, because turnovers have a huge luck component. Moving the ball, much less so. I had the wrong side in that game and I won. Like if we're talking, this is a fundamental issue though. Are you ranking people based on their wins and sort of resume ranking, or are you ranking them based on how they've actually played? Because there are certainly teams that have played better than Iowa who have a loss right now who I would have over Iowa. Iowa has not played very well. We know turnovers have a huge luck component. Otherwise, Bama would lead the nation in turnover margin, turnover return for touchdowns, all that stuff every single year, and they don't. They lead the nation in like yards per play margin and things that are actually controllable and sustainable, not luck.
When you're talking about resume metrics versus predictive metrics, which will
Yeah.
be something that we
Yes.
argue for the entire season. So,
Right. And it's just a difference of opinion. Like if that's how you want to do the poll, that's fine. I just
but among
I would take Iowa State over
64,
Iowa right now
I
if they
think
played
that
today.
we have a balance of that among 64 voters. There's some
Mhm.
like everyone's going to have their own percentage of that. I'm glad that this is are you ready? Got something else on Iowa?
Yeah, well, first of all, you mentioned the 64 voters. I wanted to send a quick shout out to the voter who accidentally voted for Arizona over Arizona State. But the other thing is like, this is setting up, because you mentioned it, but like how this is huge for Ohio State that Iowa's ranked 5th, because I think it's huge for the Big Ten too, in the fact that Iowa should probably win its next 2 games against Kent State and Colorado State. So it'll probably stay in the top 5 for a while. And then you've got a Penn State team that's currently at 10 who gets Auburn this weekend, and if they beat Auburn, that could probably bump them up. And then if they beat Villanova and Indiana, we're suddenly looking at Penn State at Iowa on October 9th in what could be like a top 5, top 6 matchup, and it doesn't involve Ohio State. So I think that could be good for the Big Ten overall too.
Okay, let's take this to the next team. I'm glad this is caught. I wasn't really sure how it's going to go. AP Top 25 has Texas A&M number 7 after a narrow victory in Denver, Colorado against Colorado. The coaches poll has Texas A&M number 5. So this is the reverse of Iowa, where the coaches are higher on Texas A&M than the AP. the AP higher on Iowa than they are on Texas A&M. For those who haven't seen it, Clemson is at 6 in both these positions. So Texas A&M, are you more with the AP or are you more with the coaches?
AP. You got and you got to consider Haynes King got hurt, although he wasn't exactly balling, but you have to look at how they looked in these games, the opponent they're playing. Like, I would have them lower than the coaches, but I think the coaches are they're less likely to make massive adjustments. They're the ones that go, who did I vote for last week? Let me pencil it in. Okay, yeah, the top 5, this team didn't lose. Up, let's just keep them right there. They're less likely to adjust because they haven't seen them. And that's they shouldn't be watching games. They're studying their tape, their next opponent. They're laser focused on one thing. It's their team and who their opponent is. So I don't have a problem with it. I would have them lower because of how they've looked.
I'm right in between. On my ballot this week, I had A&M 6th. And again, it's one of those situations where that probably should have mentioned it when it comes to Iowa. It's like right now, after you get past that top 5, I guess, of Alabama, Oklahoma, Georgia, Oregon, who's number 5. Anyway, after you get past that kind of spot, you've got a lot of really similar teams. So it does come down to just resume or what you think as far as going forward predictive and how they've performed. So I don't think Texas A&M has been incredibly impressive through 2 games for sure. It's just, had I known the Haynes King injury before having to submit the ballot, I might have docked them a few points. So it's hard to really gauge them right now.
Okay, I'm with the coaches poll only because I had them over Iowa. Who has a better defense, Texas A&M or Iowa?
Texas A&M.
Well, I think they're the same team. I think
has a better
they're
offense?
the same team right now.
I think A&M's a better version of Iowa, but they're the same style.
With Zach Calzada, I'm going to withhold judgment on who has the better offense, but I think A&M has the better defense.
I do like Iowa's running backs, but I like A&M's running backs too.
Jalen Watermeyer might be your tiebreaker there for Texas A&M's offense.
Correct. Yeah.
But if it's this close and we're debating it, shouldn't it be the team with the 2 better wins?
Hey, Danny.
Hey, well, listen, they'll have a common opponent after this week, after Iowa plays Kent State. So Kent State will be the deciding factor.
Kent State went into College Station and played Texas A&M. Strange game. Had us thinking all kinds of new things about Texas A&M's offense, which I suppose went out the window when Haynes King gets injured on the very first series. And then all of a sudden you've got to go from your new offense to now whatever you're going to do to be able to piece together this game. Thank you for mentioning that. Kent State will be playing Iowa, and let's see, where was it? If this truly is going to be a chaos season, I agree, Will McDonald. If Kent State beating Iowa, that would be hilarious. That would settle this debate. That would absolutely be hilarious. Okay.
I mean, yeah, I'm not going to say it's going to happen, but Kent State can put a lot of points up on you in a hurry. And I don't know about Iowa's offensive capability being able to keep up if that happens.
What if A&M loses to Arkansas?
That could happen too.
How do they look?
Oh, because Arkansas is a ranked team now? That A&M's floor for a drop could end up being buoyed by the fact that Arkansas is a top 25 team?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to bet A&M against Arkansas. I think Arkansas is going to get trendy. Arkansas's defense primarily lives on basically teams not being willing to be patient and not willing to run the ball and try to push the ball down the field. They're like one of these just kind of humble, hey, don't hit us with explosive plays type defenses. And A&M never tries to hit explosive plays through the air anyway. So they're like, that's fine. We'll just go on these, year-long drives and then still play really good defense. I think that's an interesting spot.
But is not ready to have the Arkansas second best team in the SEC West conversation.
Mm-mm.
All right.
I'm not. It was a great question, though. I actually got some feedback on Twitter that I took too long to answer that. So, yeah.
All right. So Ohio State is our next team that is divided between the AP and the coaches. Ohio State is number 9 in the AP top 25 and number 11 in the coaches poll. There's a lot to peel apart with this Ohio State team versus what we think it can be, what we have seen it be in flashes, and what was exposed in terms of a lot of different weaknesses here. So are you with the AP and the writers on Ohio State, maybe a little bit higher than consensus, or are you on the coaches thinking that this is not a top 10 team right now?
I'm with the AP. they've got them in the same spot as my ballot at 9th. I've actually got Ohio State a spot ahead of Iowa on my ballot. I don't think losing to Oregon as the season moves on is going to prove to be a bad loss.
And this is Tom's Oregon Ducks. Good on you. You backed yourself into a corner over months of analysis and win totals locks and
there's no corner.
Expert pick.
Free and easy.
Yeah, no. You were like, hey, you know what? And Oregon's a playoff team. And we were all like, okay, Tom. Look great now.
I knew all along.
Why are they that? Go ahead, Tom. Go ahead, bud.
No, go ahead, Danny.
Why are they that far from Clemson? You know, like if you wanted to do this based, I have them lower because I would penalize for a loss, and it was a home loss. But I mean, if Clemson's is considered a good loss and you keep them up there at 6, why would you? I mean, Ohio State's loss wasn't that much different.
And
like it was different looking.
Who looked more impressive in their loss?
Like, I think Ohio State did.
Yeah.
But it was to an inferior quality team, right? Like
Why?
Ohio State was a 14-point favorite and Clemson was a 3-point favorite.
But just because the spread was wrong doesn't mean it's like Oregon is not an inferior quality team. Again, this is an Oregon team.
To Georgia?
They just literally went on the road and beat Ohio State. Why the hell can't they beat Georgia? Georgia couldn't score against Clemson. Oregon's got a better defense than Clemson.
I do think that Ryan Day has a real problem, though. Like the way that Ohio State recruits, I refuse to accept the idea that they have missed on all of these defensive recruits. What they do right now, and I follow some guys on Twitter who are pretty sharp coaches. We looked at this in the offseason. We talked about it last year. Last year, I was willing to excuse a little bit because it was the COVID year. And, Kerry Combs didn't get to do all the stuff he wanted to do and install his stuff. Seems like he still hadn't installed his stuff because they are so simple on defense. And if you're going to be super simple on defense, you need to basically be Iowa, which means you never have missed assignments. You have tremendous fundamentals, and you're so simple that it allows you to play super fast. And like Joe Moorhead, the offensive coordinator for Oregon, ate his lunch because they don't have enough complexity in that scheme relative to the level of fundamentals that they play at. Their guys don't play to their testing times and the athleticism that we know that they have. And Danny, if you knew that the opponent was going to play some version of cover 3 on every single snap and not play it all that well, you would tear them up. And I've seen enough now. Like Ryan Day, this is like Kerry Combs is Ryan Day's Mike Stoops. Eventually, you got to fire him because you're going to keep wasting all these great offenses that you have. And this is 2 years in a row now that Ohio State has a tremendous offense. They rolled up, 600 yards on Oregon and didn't win? I know they played some situational football stuff, not great, but defensively, that's inexcusable. It's not like Oregon has difference makers at the skill positions, other than the running back. I think that you got to make a change there. And like, Danny, just talk about it. Like, there's no way that they can do what they do with that level of talent.
Not against good teams like Oregon. They might be able to do it against some of the lower teams in the Big Ten, but when you get, and especially a coordinator like Joe Moorhead, who has the weapons that he has, he will pick you apart. The other thing too is maybe they don't have that Chase Young type figure up front. Maybe they don't have that shutdown corner on the outside. I saw some of our comments. Somebody said, "What's wrong with cover 3?" I would say the Legion of Boom, like the Seahawks ran cover 3 a lot, and they'd have little variations in it, but they were doing it close to perfection when they were doing it. And they had some dudes up front that were some of the best, defensive players in the NFL. But so a lot of your reads as a quarterback are made off single high or too high safety. Like that's your first thing you're looking for when you're dropping back to pass. Is it single high? I'm going to work this side of the field. And if it's too high, I'm going to work this side of the field. And if you only have to know every single time, you're just going to be working the single high look. Then you can have mirrored routes on both sides that both have success rates against a single high safety. In the run game, you can go away from the safety. Whichever one is coming down in run support, you can run away from him with a really simple opposite call or some sort of audible at the line of scrimmage that's really, really basic. Because college, you do have to keep some things basic. But if you just have the run support safety and you know which way he's coming down and you just go the other way, you're going to have an advantage in the run game every single time. Like it is, you have to be multiple. And it can't just be cover 3 or man. Like it's got to be multiple. You have to show different looks. You have to go too high sometime just to keep the other team guessing. Because if you don't, they will rip you apart just like Oregon did on Saturday.
I think cover 3 is great. I think it's a great defense. I think it's a great podcast name, and it's fantastic. Sorry, Tom. I thought I should mention that.
And I do think like you could run cover 3. That's fine. If that's your base defense, that's fine. It's just if you're not getting any pressure or a pass rush, you need to figure out ways to, produce it. And they're clearly not getting it by just lining up straight and going straight ahead on every single time with their 4 down linemen, which is what they were doing against Oregon and wasn't working. And even going against, Minnesota, they only had 4 tackles for loss against the Gophers. Now, part of that is obviously the fact that Minnesota ran the ball 50 times per game. And it's, they were kind of just playing it that way, but still, they're not getting pressure on opposing quarterbacks. They have far too much talent on that defensive line not to be getting pressure. And maybe when you're playing Maryland or Indiana and those offensive lines, it'll come naturally without doing anything. But when it's not, you have to have a plan B. You have to have something you can bring out to just change things up and generate the pressure that's not there, because there's no way in hell you're going to stop anybody, no matter who your secondary is, if the quarterback's got all the time in the world to wait for his receiver to find the empty spot in your zone.
And I believe that Minnesota actually ran a lot of the stuff that Oregon did. Oregon just looked at it. They watched the tape. They said, is this really Ohio State's answer every time? Like, this is the way they play this look like every time? Okay, we're going to add 2 more tags on top of it. And that's how they were just so successful. It's like, why is Ohio State not always outgapped? I don't want to speak in hyperbole, but consistently outgapped. Why do they look like they have nobody to set the edge there? Why are they getting formation to death? Is this really their answer for this or that? It's look, sometimes and the level of athlete that Ohio State recruits, they may not have a Joey Bosa up front. They should be better than this.
3 more teams.
Hey, should we rename the pod? Should we rename? It's cover 3. It's really basic. They do have versions, like they have 3 Sky, 3 Buzz. Maybe we call it 3 Bud.
Cover 3
Get
Buzz.
it? Maybe that should be our new name.
It's a good segment.
We kind of have cover 3 Buzz. I mean, we get Camp Buzz,
That's right.
We figure out ways to get it in. All right, 3 more teams with a differing opinion between the AP and the coaches poll up in the top 12. One of the biggest headline programs and teams that we will talk about a lot this week, the Penn State Nittany Lions. AP loving themselves some Nittany Lions. They've got them at number 10, 1 spot behind Ohio State. The coaches have them down at number 12, though also 1 spot behind Ohio State. Penn State, 6-point favorite. We're going to break it down so we don't have to talk about this only through the lens of the Auburn game. But with Penn State, are you more with the AP or the coaches?
Right in the middle.
11?
Yeah, I think that Penn State's good, but they haven't, had they won that game against Wisconsin. I think that's huge. Then last week was just kind of a whatever game, nothing to take away from it. So I think that that's one of those areas where it's more that I need to see how Wisconsin looks going forward too. Like, how big is that Wisconsin win going to look as the season goes along before I really pump up Penn State? But like I was saying earlier, when it comes to that possible like top 6 matchup against Iowa in a few weeks, Penn State comes out this weekend and not only beats Auburn, but looks really impressive while doing it. That's going to move them up just from a narrative and a perception standpoint of, oh, they beat an SEC team. Even if it's not a good SEC team, in the minds of voters, it's going to inflate their value even further to add that to the Wisconsin win.
Give me
That is
AP.
fair.
I think Penn State's a very good football team. If I have to go like a buy or sell on Penn State and we're making this binary, I'm going to go buy. I like the Nittany Lions. I go AP.
Like, if they were 7th or something, I'd have a little bit of pause, but 10th to me does not feel extreme. They did go on the road at Wisconsin. I don't know if Wisconsin is a super elite team. I think I was perhaps wrong on them in the preseason, right? Just based on how their offenses looked. But 10 doesn't seem outrageous, so I'll go ahead and go with the AP.
What do you think, Danny? Danny?
Did we lose Danny?
Danny, did you lose audio?
Danny's gone.
Danny. All right. The Florida Gators, also another one of these teams that we've got. They are number 11 in the AP, but all the way up to number 9 in the coaches poll. So the Gators, again, one of the most important teams to look at for this week, as they are going to be playing against Alabama in the SEC on CBS Game of the Week. You can watch it for free on CBSSports.com, on the CBS Sports app, on any connected TV or mobile device. So the Gators, are you more with the AP or more with the coaches, with the AP being a little bit more of the, cautious, waiting to see more, and the coaches seem to be a little bit more confident in Dan Mullen's squad?
I'm leaning towards the coach's side here. I'm a little higher on Florida than I think others. Part of it, honest to God, real life assessment of my own biases here. Part of it might be I've seen less of Florida than I have the other team, so I just don't have enough to check off as like a negative or a concern.
I have them 10th in my ranking, so literally like it's right smack dab in the middle. I am interested in this game this weekend, by the way. I feel like last year Dan Mullen needed to scheme up one-on-one opportunities. This year, I don't think anybody on the outside really scares you for the Gators. So instead of trying to find ways to get guys isolated one-on-one, I think Mullen has an interesting challenge that he needs to find ways to get guys wide open through coverage busts by Alabama, which I'm not sure bodes super well because Bama's secondary is loaded. But look, Florida's a good football team. Their defensive front, I think, is better. I think they hit on some of those transfers. I don't know. 9 sounds fine. 11 sounds fine. Like I said, I have them 10th. So, it's right in the middle.
Don't you think it's clear as day that Anthony Richardson is a guy, assuming he's healthy? Yeah. I think Dan Mullen's got a really tricky decision to make, though. Do you make the move before Bama, or do you wait until about halftime of the game, or just wait until after the game, get him a nice, fresh, clean start with a winnable game the following week before you throw him to the wolves, so to speak? Because I've been very underwhelmed with Emory Jones so far. It was one of these ones where I kind of trusted Dan Mullen could maximize the talent he's given. Emory Jones just may not be the guy.
So I think that part of the mentality is that that Anthony Richardson, if you name him the starting quarterback, and if Alabama knows that Anthony Richardson is the starting quarterback, then the preparation that Alabama defense has to go through is less of the playbook. It is less tape. It is less of the Florida offense, of the Dan Mullen offense. Maybe you are going back to Mississippi State to try and grab little pieces, but even if Emory Jones has struggled, you have to think that he has a wider grasp of the entire Florida offense in a way that it would almost be a competitive disadvantage to Florida to come out and say, Anthony Richardson is our starting quarterback. He might end up playing more than Emory Jones against Alabama, but as long as Dan Mullen is fine with all the Florida fans yelling at him, and boy, he sure seems fine with it. He seemed a little ticked off with all the reporters doing the questioning about the quarterback position during today's media availability. But as long as Dan Mullen can withstand that, I think that he at least gives himself in the game planning and the game preparation. He avoids being disadvantaged by telling Nick Saban, by telling Pete Goulding and that entire Alabama defense, hey, Anthony Richardson has looked explosive, and these are the things that he's been able to do against, by the way, FAU and USF, right? Like he is not going to be hitting those same kind of explosive plays when we level up in talent and athleticism against Alabama. I believe that you've got to let Emory Jones still go out there and at least get this thing started, because otherwise it's a very skinny playbook. I would imagine. I could be very, very wrong, but that's what my guess is on the situation, because based on what we've seen, there's no reason why QB1 should not be QB2.
I mean, we made a separate video about it, how I said Richardson will take over, at least by the end of the season, if not before. I think Chip absolutely nailed it. Emory Jones knows more of this offense. You are too limited right now, I think, to play a full game with Richardson against Bama. Why not roll him out there the next week against Tennessee, a game you can actually win, and then a game that you probably need to get him ready for the next weekend after that in their game at Kentucky. So I think they'll continue to play both until Richardson has more of a grasp of the entire offense. But this Gator staff knows, like they know Richardson's the future and not Jones.
It's just like the Bears with Justin Fields.
Is Fields not going to be the starter for week 2?
No.
Okay. We still got to roll with QB1. All right. Now our last one that we've got, again, this is from teams number 5 through 12. 6 of them are 2 spots apart in both the AP and the coaches as we continue to go through and compare them. Notre Dame, number 12 in the AP top 25 after escaping with a win against Toledo. Notre Dame, number 10 in the coaches poll. Which way we going, AP or coaches?
I mean, one of the wins of the year in Tallahassee in overtime. I mean, come on. Talk about resume builder. Whew.
I mean, I disagree with both. I think they're both too high. I have them at 13 in my ballot. And honestly, that might be too high, like upon reflection, because this is a Notre Dame team that needed overtime to get past Florida State, blew a huge lead. The same Florida State team that then turns around and loses to Jacksonville State. And then on this Saturday, Notre Dame needed a last-minute drive in the fourth quarter to beat Toledo at home. And Toledo, I know Bud likes Toledo. I like Toledo. They're probably going to win the MAC this year. They're a good MAC team, but they shouldn't be going into South Bend and nearly knocking off the Fighting Irish. And if the Fighting Irish are a top 12 or a top 10 team, definitely shouldn't have been that close. So I think everybody's probably a little high on the Irish right now.
I have them 18th.
Yeah, I was going to say they're closer to Arizona State than they are to these teams that are up in the top 10.
So in my notes column, like this is a team that I just wrote, get healthy, right? They're missing a couple key guys right now. I think that we already knew they had a bunch of new starters in for this year. I think some of these injuries have impacted their continuity. They were sort of lucky to escape that Toledo game at times. Oh, Toledo also got some breaks, to be fair. But I do think they have real potential for the rest of the season if they can get some guys back healthy, particularly along that offensive line.
Yeah, like if you're going based on how teams have looked, there's no reason in the world UCLA should be ranked behind Notre Dame.
No, God, no.
Agree. Without a doubt. Coming up on the other side, it's time for Upon Further Review. A chance now that we've been able to review the tape, go back on the box scores. It's our first time checking in with you since late night on Saturday night. So our final thoughts on week 2, and we turn the page for the week 3 storylines that have our attention, including will Clay Helton get tarmacked in Pullman? Next. All right, upon further review, this is sort of our final thoughts from the weekend that was before we turn the page. Tom, you want to lead us off?
Yeah, we kind of touched on it already, but like on Saturday night, I had to, when it came to the Oregon-Ohio State game, Chip, as you can attest to, I had to live blog it. And when you're live blogging a game, it's kind of hard to really zone in on any one thing in particular, and it's always kind of hard to do it live on a television broadcast too. But I said on the show on Saturday night that Ohio State was mostly in like a base man. No, as we talked about, they were rewatching it yesterday. They were playing cover 3.
Bud,
did you guys see how many yards per play Stanford put up on USC? I wasn't watching that game live. I DVR'd it and went back and watched a little bit. They put up 8 yards a play on USC's defense. I think finding Tanner McKee, I don't know why in the hell they were playing Jack West over Tanner McKee. Tanner McKee is a guy who we rated really highly out of high school. Then he took his LDS mission. Then he came back to Stanford. The guy is like, I thought he had the goods, and he looked really nice for them. Of course, they ran the ball well. It's nice to throw the ball off play action when you're running for damn near 300. But Stanford looked pretty good. Unfortunately for the Fighting Bartons, Stanford figure out who their quarterback should be literally like the week before they go to Nashville.
Upon further review, I might join you guys on the Clay Helton is not a good coach bandwagon. Like, I might just go ahead and jump on there. I had such high hopes for the Trojans this year. That was embarrassing. Like I know you were kind of joking, does he get tarmacked? But that was the final nail in the coffin. Like, I think for any reasonable, rational, maybe sometimes too patient analysts that are out there trying to give him every opportunity, that's a game you can't lose.
He's a very nice man, and nobody wants to say mean things about him. That's what it boils
Super
down
nice
to.
guy.
Yeah. Did you see the column where, it's the saddest premise, but I believe the writer's Brady McCullough, and the pitch was
Ted Lasso.
During this offseason, Clay Helton told us his favorite TV character was Ted Lasso, which is cool, except he's really starting to resemble Ted Lasso as the affable, bumbling, incompetent coach who everyone just likes because he's such a nice guy and a good guy.
There was McCullough's column in the LA Times. Bill Plaschke also wrote a column in the LA Times. Anytime there's 2 columns calling for you to be fired in week 2 of the season, Not a great sign. I wrote in the Monday after today that, I just I wrote about what USC needs to do after it replaces Hilton. I didn't even write like, no, they should fire him. I feel like you said, Danny, the nail's in the coffin. It's only a matter of time now. So when it's going to happen.
So my upon further review was a result that was very much off the radar, but it has me rethinking a lot of what we thought going into the season. And the big headline that I've got for my upon further review is that super seniors don't mean squat. Okay. Because Illinois, 22 super seniors, we saw how that's gone. I said all offseason that Billy Napier and this Louisiana squad, like in all their experience, that was why they were going to be dangerous to Texas, competing for another Sun Belt championship. I think App State and Coastal Carolina look markedly better than the Ragin' Cajuns through 2 weeks. The Ragin' Cajuns, for those who didn't pay attention, 3-point win against Nichols over the weekend. And that then has me going back to look at the Texas result, which, while a ranked win for the Texas Longhorns, maybe got us a little bit over our skis on where all gas, no brakes was. The other example here is Ball State, which went into Happy Valley, and that was a game that Penn State just controlled for 60 minutes. It's like all these teams that I had given little plus value to because of their super seniors and all their experience, it hasn't really seemed to pay off in the way that we thought. So my upon further review is that super seniors might not mean squat.
Well, it's like the whole returning starters stat that every single year, it's only good if your starters are good. Like the guys coming back. It's the same thing with the super seniors. Like it's not great if they're not great players. There's some value in some programs to have an experience, but some of the players are just maxed. There's not really much more you can offer.
I have two more quickly.
Mm-hmm.
2 Power 5 teams who won, but if you really dig into the box scores, they should have lost. So first, do you know Miami of Ohio outgained Minnesota on a per play basis?
Mm-hmm.
Minnesota did not look very good. Like, I don't know what was going on there, but like they probably should have lost that game. The other one, we got to talk about Oklahoma State.
Yep.
I know we talked about Spencer Sanders. Tulsa had like a 40% yards per play edge in that game. Just Oklahoma State had better luck returning their turnovers they got for scores or near scores. They don't look very good. I'm sitting on an over 7.5 ticket there, and that ain't getting home.
Speaking of, and good idea from Bud that from the group chat. Wednesday's show will include how we're feeling about our win totals locks. So a great chance for us to, when we're sitting on those tickets, let you know how we're feeling. And you mentioned the Miami of Ohio Minnesota game. So in my notes, I had that Gophers led 21-3 at halftime and nearly blew it. I imagine they just packed it in and thought they could cruise, right?
I think so. Well, I have a quarter by quarter breakdown. So I'm curious as to how they actually built that lead.
Like
right?
They gave Trayson Potts 34 carries, and I think he did it at like a very workman, like 3 or 4 yards per carry. So he got over 100 yards, which gave your AP recap writer exactly what you want. The replacement for Muhammad Ibrahim is right here in Trayson Potts, but it was, good job of running behind a big offensive line. But yeah, I also had in my notes that Miami of Ohio outgained Minnesota too.
No, I think, Chip, you bring up a really good point because Minnesota had a 50% success rate in the first quarter, which is great. Obviously 40% second. And then the third quarters where this damage really happened. It was like Minnesota thought the game was over because they were up by 18 points. And Miami, Ohio, just like everything they ran worked in the third quarter. And nothing Minnesota ran did.
Regardless of game script, I still feel like 287 yards of offense isn't enough at home against Miami, Ohio.
Yeah, that's a good point.
That's a very good point. Okay. Any other last lingering notes or thoughts on week 2 before we turn the page? All right. Week 3 storylines. Let's start up in Happy Valley where we've got Penn State hosting Auburn. Auburn has through 2 weeks, they put together some pretty good computer numbers. And yet I am finding myself short of being confident in this Tigers team to go on the road to Happy Valley. I haven't decided on my pick yet. I've still got some time to mull it over, do some more reading, do some more research. But I was, of these 2 teams where Penn State had the game against Wisconsin, I feel like Auburn, we haven't really gotten to see a test that is going to reveal their weaknesses, a test that's going to reveal what they need to do and what their moves are when they start to find some adversity on the field. Shout out Will Muschamp. Do you think that this Auburn team right now is in a position to, like many SEC teams have in the past, go on the road and you're like, oh, this is when they get got? Doesn't always play out that way. What are the general storylines and the threads from this massive game this weekend that are interesting to y'all?
I've been digging on this game a lot. So Auburn's offense in game 1 against Akron looked really good, like 10 yards of play. Man, Auburn, look how buttoned up they are. They look really, really good. They're tight. Okay. Then with a backup quarterback, Temple goes to Akron over the weekend and drops 8 yards per play on Akron. And then I got to thinking, I don't know, if Temple, who just got shut down by Rutgers, doesn't have a starting quarterback in Mathis and goes to Akron and drops 8 yards on you per play before garbage time, how impressive is that 10 yards really per play that you put on Akron in that first game? I think that I'm very confident that Auburn defensively can run with Penn State. I think Auburn's back 7 has a lot of guys who will play in the NFL. Like, that part of what they've been recruiting is still there. I don't think Penn State's going to have these guys that are just, running by Auburn. But can Bo Nix and that offense do anything to prevent Penn State from starting drives at their own 40, the 50, Auburn's 40? This could turn into a field position type game pretty quickly if their offense turns out, or if Auburn's offense turns out to not be for real. And after seeing how bad Akron's defense is, I have a lot less confidence in what Auburn's offense actually is.
Yeah, I think like a concern going into this game, like, first of all, it's Sean Clifford versus Bo Nix. So it's a battle of two quarterbacks who have not exactly been lauded very long on this podcast, generally on the wrong end of our opinions. But what concerns me if I'm Auburn is, like, I think Auburn's good enough. Like, Penn State, I think, is good. I don't think Penn State is good enough to where I'm just going to assume it's going to beat Auburn at home. But I think part of it, like, this might sound silly, but I think a part of a concern that I have for Auburn is that they have not struggled at all this year. It has been incredibly easy. And now they're going to be going on the road in front of 100,000 people who are out of their freaking minds. And what's going to happen the first time something goes wrong for the first time all season, when you're in that environment for the first time in a long time? I worry that something could go wrong early and they could just get buried. So I think it's going to be really important for Auburn to get off to a good start in this game if it's going to have any shot at pulling off the quote unquote upset.
Don't you think aren't you kind of expecting an ugly field position game, Bud, when you said that? Like, yeah, I just don't see either one of these teams just running up and down the field on the other.
I made the number 55, and that's with Penn State. Like, I've really upped my tempo ratings for Penn State. I believe they intend to play very fast under Mike Yurcich. And so I think that kind of tells you guys, if I have a crazy high tempo rating on a game and I still have a number in the mid 50s, I do think it'll be ugly. I think both defenses will have the upper hand.
And is that the quarterbacks, which makes you think? I mean,
yeah, both will be going pro in something other than sports.
Yeah, neither one really strike a lot of fear in you. It is like, but I think this could be a game of a couple big plays. I mean, the Wisconsin game, I think, is a pretty good example of what you might see. Like, back and forth, kind of ugly quarterback play. There's going to get one of these teams going to get a receiver deep on a post behind a safety. It's going to be there. And the question is, does Sean Clifford hit him or does he not? And does Bo Nix, does he make a play or does he throw a pick? Like, I think it's going to be an ugly kind of slugfest where the defenses are on display. And then it's like, who do you trust more in that situation? I guess I trust the home team.
Yeah, exactly. Because I feel like Bo Nix is more likely to make the back-breaking mistake in this road environment than Sean Clifford will be at home.
Mm-hmm.
So another headline is the Cover 3 Historian Special, as Indiana plays host to the Cincinnati Bearcats.
Oh.
Bearcats are a 3.5-point favorite. Now, we still got one more game. I believe Cincinnati is off next week, then back in action at Notre Dame the following week. And as we have said all offseason, and we will continue to say, for that to even be interesting to talk about Cincinnati down the stretch, once we get into conference play, they need both of these road wins. And it will not be against 2 top 25 teams because Indiana is not ranked right now. And given our aforementioned assessment of Notre Dame, that win might not even carry some of the same clout as we thought based on the preseason, but still road games against quality opponents. Does Cincinnati get it done, or does Indiana end this storyline right now?
Can we have a timeout real fast?
Sure.
Can Coca put the Cover 3 film room comment on the screen? We're talking about who else is Clifford going to throw to. All right, so he wrote, Clifford loves throwing to one receiver, first Hamler, now Dotson. I feel like Auburn can limit Dotson, and then where will he go? I got totally ripped for this on the Penn State Lions 247 message board over the summer, so I need to make sure I talk about this. Parker Washington. He's very good. I'm going to make sure I mentioned him several times for you guys. He is really good. Penn State does have 2 legitimate receivers. Just wanted to point that out. Love me some Parker Washington. He's excellent. Sorry I didn't mention every player on your team over the summer, but I actually do think he's good.
Back to the Indiana Cincinnati. Coming in, I thought they split. I think they still do. I think they get this one. And Notre Dame, I'm not ready to write off yet.
Okay.
But I think they get Indiana this week.
Okay.
Indiana's kind of fallen back to being Indiana a little bit.
I think Cincinnati is the better team. I don't think I'll be that shocked if Indiana beats it, because I think in Bloomington, I think that it's going to be better. I think Cincinnati's going to win. I just don't think I don't know, honestly. I really don't know. There's a part of me that kind of wants Cincinnati to lose. Oh God, that's going to get taken out of context. But there's a part of me that wants Cincinnati to lose just so we could be done with the stupid will they make the playoff talk.
Coastal.
They're not.
Coastal. Huh?
They're not getting close to the Coastal. But I mean, like Chip's saying at the top, it's like, well, now poor Cincinnati, their Indiana win's been turned down. It's like it's not as big if it happens, and the Notre Dame win might not be worth as much. It never mattered to begin with. So if we could just stop this dumb conversation. I know Cincinnati fans take it personally. It's not you. It's just the system. You're not invited. Sorry.
Texas, go ahead.
No, I just think that Cincinnati's offensive line is not that great, and I think Indiana can cause them problems up front. I don't know why this is over a field goal, personally.
Texas will be going to a new starting quarterback, Casey Thompson. The game is against Rice, so I don't know how much we're going to get specifically, and I do expect that we will see Hudson Card, but for Hudson Card, and we saw this, I was looking at Chip Brown's breakdown on Horns 247. It was 5 out of the first 7 drives of the game led by Hudson Card were 3 and outs. And the only touchdown came right after a short field set up by an interception. Just was not effective as a quarterback. Casey Thompson comes in, first 2 drives, both end up being long double-digit play drives that end up being touchdowns, including, and I'm quoting Chip Brown here because it was a great line. He said, including a Sam Ehlinger special when he carried 4 defenders into the end zone. So anytime that you're invoking the name of an iconic Texas quarterback, my ears are going to perk up. Do you think that this switch continues in Texas where they're going back and forth? Or do you think that Casey Thompson, and I'll just go ahead and let you know, home against Rice, home against Texas Tech, and then at TCU. So advantageous opportunities if you are Casey Thompson, you've just been named the starter, to put together a couple good performances. How do you see this quarterback battle playing out over the next couple weeks?
I believe Sark when he said neither one of them separated in the competition. Like that, but I do think there's value in experience, and that's why he's going with this. Casey Thompson's been around more. He's seen a little bit more. Maybe that was why he had more success when he's a little bit more comfortable coming in on the road, got a little bit of more experience under his belt. But I don't think this is the last quarterback move you'll see this year for Texas. Like, I wouldn't be surprised. And this is not a good situation to be in. If you're Sark, you want to find your guy. But I wouldn't be surprised if you see him play both of them for the next couple games. Maybe all season long.
I think he might find his guy here in the next couple weeks. I think that Hudson Card is more dynamic overall, and I think he's got a ton of potential, but I think that he's still very raw. Like, that was the one thing I took away from that Arkansas game, where it was like he looked overwhelmed. And at least Casey Thompson has that experience, and I think that Thompson getting the start against Rice That is a team that Texas should come out and be pretty comfortable against, and Casey Thompson should play well against. And I think Hudson Card will get snaps, and I think he'll look good in this game as well. But I just think that over these next couple games against Rice and Texas Tech, it's a good time if you're Casey Thompson to be taking over the starting role, because you're probably going to look good, and you're going to kind of ahead of that TCU game, which looks like it could be a tough game the way TCU, has been played against Cal on Saturday. I think Thompson has time to establish himself against two opponents that will present him that opportunity too.
I think they'll play both. I think they really believe in Hudson Card long term, but they also need to win some games in the Big 12. And I don't think that Hudson Card, I don't think he handled the Arkansas defense quite as well as that staff expected him to, right? So they do got to win some ball games. Rice is kind of a weird team because Rice played Arkansas tough for a half. And then Rice came out against Houston, and Houston all of a sudden figured out how to hit explosive plays again. I was like, oh, okay, that was interesting. Thank you, since I have Texas team win total over. Thank you for not doing that against Texas Tech. But like Rice's defense just got totally ripped on Saturday. So I didn't watch the game. I don't know what happened. I just saw their explosive rating was through the roof. So I expect both quarterbacks to probably have some success here.
Yeah, that's pretty much what happened to him against Arkansas. Like, they were great for the first quarter and a half, and then Arkansas was like, oh wait, we can just do this.
Lots of injury news on here on Monday. Skylar Thompson is out indefinitely with the knee injury, though he may be back before the end of the season. We'll see. Haynes King, it's a fractured ankle, won't be playing before mid-October at the earliest. NC State linebacker Peyton Wilson going down is just absolutely awful for that defense, just because of how much he did from the middle of the field, both in terms of being able to get back in pass protection or rush the passer. There's a lot more than that. So what stands out to y'all as some of the biggest and most significant injury news when it comes to and some of this can still be from Saturday too, where we've just gotten updates on Monday. What has you adjusting your notes and your expectations for some of these teams?
Brandon Peters is back.
Yes, that's the key one. Do you guys follow Phil Dracovic on Instagram?
I do not.
I don't either, but everybody on Twitter just screenshotted it while we've been broadcasting from Newton Wellesley Hospital, which I assume is in Boston. He just Instagrammed his hand in a cast. It's also based on the thumb, and I think it's a throwing hand, so he's going to miss a little bit.
That's not great for Boston.
That's huge for like that really will decide some ACC win totals, because he's that team. Their defense still sucks. Mm-hmm. And like when they put in Chip, how did we decide we say the kid's name?
Dennis Grossel.
Dennis Grossel. They were not really very effective against UMass. So that's kind of a one-man team. That's too harsh. Their potential is based on Dracovic actually playing well, like he's been doing the entire time he's been at BC. If he's in a cast, they're hurting.
In any others?
I think the Haynes King injury is big for Texas A&M, just based on what we saw from Calzada in that game against Colorado. Although I do think that sometimes when you lose your quarterback during a game instead of before a game, you unexpectedly have to go to another guy. It could lead to some, disconnect there in the offense and what your game plan was. So maybe now that they have time to game plan and prepare with Calzada as their starter, things will look a bit smoother. But I do think that if you're the Aggies and you're considering yourself a contender in the SEC West and maybe a possible playoff team, losing your starting quarterback for a month is not a good thing.
It's Grossel.
Grossel. Okay.
You're gross.
I needed. Hey, listen, it's Grossel in my brain, and I will make sure it's Grossel. But that is from the game notes from this past weekend when against UMass. Did they cover against UMass?
No, UMass got him.
If he's
UMass
tough, can
38.
we call him? If he's tough, can we call him Gristle?
Yes.
Ooh.
All right.
Grossel.
The problem for A&M, as I see it here, is who is on the schedule, right? In those weeks that King's going to be out. So if he's going to miss a month, let's just say he's going to miss the next 4 games. They don't have a bye in there. New Mexico, they'll beat them. They play Arkansas at the neutral site. They host Mississippi State. And then importantly, they host Bama. If he's not going to be back for Bama, you're not going to beat Bama, because what you needed to have happen was for Jimbo to pick the right QB, which based on how bad Calzada played, he probably did pick the right QB. And then you needed that guy to play to his ceiling very quickly. And that guy's not in there anymore. So congrats to Alabama on winning the SEC West, because A&M's not going to beat them with Calzada.
I still think the SEC West is a good division.
It just doesn't
So
have
do
a clear
I.
number 2. Like,
Yeah.
is there a top
Well, Arkansas.
15 team in that division in your mind?
A top 15?
Other than Bama, like, is there a top 15 team in the SEC West as they're right now? Like A&M, I think you could. How about top 10? Top 15 is too aggressive.
No. I mean, I have A&M there, but I don't think that based on the injury and just where I would put them right this very second. No.
But I think you get from Texas A&M to Auburn to Ole Miss pretty quickly without having to move too many spots down the line.
Yeah, I think they've got a whole lot of teams in that sort of 15 to 30 range, right? And probably closer to 15.
LSU, Arkansas.
LSU. If we want to do a little more upon further review, did you guys catch them against McNeese?
No.
Yeah.
They did not look good.
I box score tracked it for the most part.
So I might have a flaw in my system, but I don't really factor in, or I don't have a good way to factor in or like really follow a lot of FBS, FCS games.
I track how long it takes to put them away.
FBS opponents.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Like, I'm like, how long before you got to garbage time? I want to see garbage time like in the first half.
Right.
You know what I mean? Or very early in the third quarter.
I'd like it to be 31-0 by halftime.
Yeah.
Because
LSU 4.6 yards of play against McNeese State.
Hey, McNeese is no, they should not have 4.6. McNeese is a good FCS program, but you're LSU.
Yeah.
What's their upcoming schedule? I'll look it up while Tom talks. Sorry about that.
Oh, Lee Mack just pulled this one up. We can. Did y'all catch the story about John Emery Jr., the LSU running back who did not play and is ineligible for the rest of the season? The way the story was presented to the media at large is a reporter says, we heard he signed up for the wrong class and that's why he's ineligible. And Ed Orgeron just said, what I can tell you is he's ineligible and he won't be playing this season. Did the man sign up for the wrong class?
I mean, I don't know. I don't want to. I feel like that's a clerical error that could be fixed pretty easily and probably shouldn't make a player ineligible for the rest of the season. But
I had a multi-credit F at Florida State because I didn't understand how to do the drop thing. This is back, like, I'm so old that we couldn't drop classes online. You had to go to the registrar's office, and I didn't understand the drop date for certain classes was different. And I had like a 3-credit F in this calculus class that I dropped.
I tell you, these kids these days, they don't know the struggle.
So I went into a class. I signed up for a lot of the wrong classes. I didn't drop them all, but I just like you, Bud. Sometimes I just took it on the chin. But the one that I definitely signed up for the wrong class for was an Italian literature class. And I was really excited to be in this Italian literature class until I sat down in this Italian literature class and the teacher was speaking all in Italian. And I thought we were going to read these Italian literature books in English and talk about them in English. And so when I raised my hand and I was like, hey, this whole class in Italian, see, I packed up my stuff and headed for the door. Sometimes you sign up for the wrong. I thought sign up for the wrong class could be like he dropped a class he couldn't have dropped, right? Like, or that sort of add drop window kind of confusion where all of a sudden he wasn't a full-time student anymore because he miscalculated on that.
Perché non hai imparato italiano?
Yeah, exactly. Why can't I speak it? Why can't I speak Italian?
Why didn't you learn it?
Well, eventually I did. By the time I was a 4.5-year senior, I finished Italian 3 finally on like my 5th try of going through foreign languages at North Carolina, and I was able to get out of there. So I figured it out. That was just early on in my journey. Okay. Any other notes before we get out of here?
Josh Proctor for Ohio State looks like that's a serious one. So again, we just ripped Ohio State's defense for like 15 minutes.
That's a problem.
It'll be its own video. So that's probably not going to make them better. Did you guys catch Arizona State UNLV? Like I bet UNLV. I was happy to cash that, but Gary Lewis in our chat saying that it was a special teams disaster for Arizona State, and I did not see it.
No, I didn't see any of that game on Saturday night.
Oh, the other big injury here is it Mitchell? The really good tight end
James
for Virginia Tech
Mitchell.
is done.
Yeah.
Yeah, like that's bad. He's a major weapon for them.
I saw Oregon that lost its tight end too. What's his name?
McDonald,
something like McEachern or something like that.
Yeah.
It's injuries. It's football. Got to overcome them. Take them one day at a time. Next man up. All that bull.
Yeah, James Mitchell's not like a top 50 NFL draft prospect, but he could have been in the NFL draft last year, and he probably was going to be one of the best wide receivers in the ACC this year. For an offense that could really use that, like, third downs, red zone, like when you just got to have somebody that's going to be a matchup advantage and get a play, Justin Fuente could scheme James Mitchell open against an advantageous matchup that is taken away from the Hokies offense. And they've got like West Virginia in on the road this weekend. West Virginia, narrow favorite. You like that? Just take the Mountaineers?
I already took Tech +3, and I feel like I'm just sitting on a grenade here. Like with the Mitchell news, and everybody's going to be on by Tech, and then they're not going to score any points. I'm already down about this one, and I have the over too. So.
I thought the ranked team on the road is an underdog is the time to just hammer the home favorite, the unranked home favorite.
I wonder if that trend is still as strong as it used to be. Like I feel like now everybody knows about it, like it's kind of baked in. Like Vegas anticipates the money coming, but I think there's something to that trend, right? Like if Vegas says we don't care about these rankings, I just not that high on West Virginia's offense, but I think both teams will play a little pacier.
And, West Virginia, another one of these teams that I do think hold on, unless I'm blanking on a game, I'm pulling this off the top of my head, but like we haven't seen West Virginia be tested. Right?
Maryland
tested them.
Heck yeah, Maryland won.
Beat them. They more than tested them.
Okay. I got to review that game before I've got a strong feel on it, but it's definitely one that I've circled of much interest.
Here's something that interested me. Can Army cover nearly 5 touchdowns against UConn?
So I made this number 34, right? It opened 32. I looked at it and I said, am I really going to put my money on Army, a team that plays this slow? But is UConn going to score? Okay. Is an important question to ask. Will UConn score any points in the game? And how many explosive plays will they allow? Because if you're giving up explosive plays to Army, like you're just totally busting it, Army's not just going to fall down for no reason. Like they'll run it into the end zone. Tom, what number would you need to play UConn? Would it start with a 4? Or would it start with a 5?
Dude. I worked myself into knots when I saw that line because it's the exact same thing. It's like, oh yeah, no, that number's right, but seriously, if you give me 35.5, I would take UConn.
You might get 35.5.
Eventually, like, go ahead and if you want Army, go ahead and nap it up now because 33.5 show bet on UConn Army.
I'll give Tom 35 for a show bet.
I don't know. I got it.
All right, 35.5.
UConn is so freaking bad, though. It's like
I'll give you 36.
No, I'm not taking it. I'm not betting on UConn.
I bet. Now I got to stop 36.5.
I bet on UConn. My very first lock of the week of this season was UConn, and it was terrible. And I'm not doing it again. I don't care. I'm not. Nope. No taking.
What about when UConn plays UMass?
Not doing it. Oh, well, I'll watch the hell out of it, and I might live bet it, but I ain't doing anything pregame.
I'll have a UConn UMass lock. I want it. I need it.
They need to have some kind of code to where they profile you as a gambler if you're live betting UConn UMass. This is our audience right here. This is who we need long term.
I mean, that's the thing, though. Will anybody even be paying attention to that game? I feel like there's going to be value. There's going to be just a lot of algorithms just shooting up numbers on that one.
Yeah.
Would you be interested in Tulsa plus 26.5
against
Ohio State?
No,
that's literally my number.
26.5.
Yeah.
I shot out 24 and I was like, ooh, do you want to really jump? Because Tulsa
I would have jumped 24.
Tulsa's defense is still. Oh wait, you're saying you would have taken Ohio State?
I would have laid at 24, but like I didn't get down on it. I didn't see it. That opened 24.
No, I said I spit out 24,
Oh,
aka line too high.
Coming off the loss, no. Like if Ohio State had beaten Oregon, maybe. But I think that we're going to see like a pissed off version of Ohio State this week.
I thought about this in the post office today too, right? Like Ohio State has a lot of guys it has not been able to work into the game yet, including dudes who are part of this passing game who I think are going to want to get some playing time. So I think Ohio State will try. I think Ohio State will try to blow them out, and I think they're going to try to work in their backup quarterback. I think they'll try to work in Marvin Harrison Jr. I think you'll see more of Smith and Jigba. I think you'll see more of Julian Fleming. Like there are dudes on that roster. This is the transfer portal era, right? Mm-hmm. And I think as a handicapper, you got to factor this thing in. Are there dudes on this roster who are going to be unhappy if they play 3 games in the season where they're not getting any balls in them, they're not really playing much? Because Ohio State hasn't had any blowouts yet. I think they will. I think Ohio State will keep throwing in the second half here.
Good notes as always. Wednesday, we will be back. We will be looking at our win totals from our win totals locks. Let you know how we're feeling about some of them. A good chance to review. See if we can somehow get this Kansas State over 5.5. We'll be piecing it together, but hey, that's the K-State way. A lot of head shaking from Bud Elliott and Tom Fernelli. You can follow him on Twitter at BudElliott3. You can follow him at Tom Fernelli. You can follow me at Chip_Patterson. Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you.